When President Roosevelt and Basil O'Connor mobilized an army of volunteers to collect dimes to pay for the research needed to conquer polio, who could have envisioned the dramatic results? How can we ever hope to equal that ultimate, incredible sense of satisfaction that came from achieving something, in my view, far more meaningful than climbing Mount Everest? That's what I dream about, and I think you do too. How can we change the world again? Hello, my name is Pauline Gravier, and like yourselves, I'm a volunteer with the March of Dimes, having served as North Texas Board Chair and Regional Chair of the National Office of Volunteers.
Hi, my name is LD Carter, and I'm a staff member with the March of Dimes. I serve as an area director for our Western region, working with a team of staff colleagues to provide direct support and assistance to our chapters. As you know, March of Dimes is the first health organization in the country to harness the power of many volunteers. It set the standard for all charities. Every other has followed our lead. It's a true American success story. But in the fast-paced world we live in, finding committed volunteers has become a competitive race. We realize that we must constantly recruit new volunteers for their creativity and fresh contacts. A partner in a professional services firm may have clients who have never sponsored a March of Dimes event. An officer in an insurance firm can mobilize an army of salespersons. A banker or an accountant can convert his or her vendors into enthusiastic contributors.
But just as importantly, we must retain our volunteers. We all know of examples such as the charismatic and well-connected woman who led a fundraiser but really didn't know much about the March of Dimes mission, but we just needed someone to fill the spot, and then she resigns from the board. And what about the 7-year volunteer who's done a lot of jobs well but just has no other mountains to climb? He's not left yet, but the fire and enthusiasm has gone out. Or maybe a volunteer gets frustrated because she doesn't know how to choose the right mix of information that a prospective contributor will respond to. What have we experienced volunteers and staff members done, or better said, what have we not done to keep these volunteers deeply committed and highly functional? To the March of Dimes, the loss of a single volunteer is heartbreaking, and the cost is enormous. With 52 chapters and 221 divisions spread out across the U.S. from Hawaii to Puerto Rico, volunteer training for our 3,000 board members has been done mostly on a local basis.
Certainly we have been lucky to have found people like you who are the backbone of the March of Dimes. Certainly our mission is compelling. Sometimes we've lucked into finding really great people, but luck won't cut it. I travel extensively, and I'm amazed at the different levels our volunteers' knowledge of who and where we are. Certainly we have been lucky to have found people like you who are the backbone of the March of Dimes. Certainly our mission is compelling. Sometimes we've lucked into finding really great people, but luck won't cut it. I have traveled extensively, and I'm amazed at the different levels of knowledge our volunteers have about who we are, where we're going, and how we want to get there. Many times there simply hasn't been enough time to fully educate. Or maybe there are differences between how a large chapter or a small chapter trains its volunteers. That's not good enough. We know we need uniform, consistent training opportunities throughout the country. To answer this need, the March of Dimes has created the Volunteer Leadership Institute that will put everyone on the same page. A volunteer in Dallas, Texas, and a volunteer in Dubuque, Iowa, and a volunteer in Memphis, Tennessee will all know the same things about the March of Dimes. In other words, the Institute will be the equivalent of the March of Dimes University, our version of the Executive Leader Institutes offered by many key universities and corporations. Now, each volunteer, whether new or experienced, will be able to view several DVDs and tools and participate in a series of discussions led by trained volunteers. We'll all have the same tools with which each chapter and division can attain its individual strategic growth plans.
But we are not jumping in feet first. I serve on the Volunteer Leadership Council that's composed of a small group of volunteers and staff from across the country. Its role is to give feedback and provide oversight, as well as cut out some of the extras. You know, when we're passionate about something, it's all too easy to put in every bit of information we've ever learned. Hopefully, our years of experience have taught us what we volunteers really want and really need to know, but we're still eager to learn new trends and new tools from others. Basically, we consider ourselves the link between national, local, and regional staff, and all March of Dimes volunteers. Every one of us here, we're all looking for the extra edge to help our mission, and we think the Institute will give it to us.
These conversational modules will last about an hour and will hopefully stimulate productive discussion between you all. Our first effort will be to address the importance of governance and chapter leadership at the March of Dimes. What are the roles and responsibilities for board members? Does your board reflect the large talent pool that's available and required to lead your chapter or division to success? We can't determine that unless we know the best way to assess the existing board. And then, what are the keys to making a successful board? We will then talk about planning. As you know, it's much easier to plan a day or a month or even a year. But to plan for long-term goals is more challenging. This module will give you an overview of our current planning processes, plus how to strategize longer-term goals versus annual targets.
We'll then address how to build capacity to support all of our chapter efforts. We'll focus on the important role that the image, reputation, and the visibility of local programs of the March of Dimes plays in a community. As March of Dimes leaders, we have not only an opportunity to engage other leaders in our community, but a business imperative to do so. We're in the relationship business after all, and we must reach out to area businesses and organizations. So we're asking each of you to work closely with your staff partners on an ongoing, year-round basis to identify the key resources in your community.
Finally, we'll talk about some of the best practices and tactics for your chapter to recruit and retain high-impact members. As part of this discussion, we'll focus on the important role of the Volunteer Development and Nominating Committee, plus the importance of creating ongoing educational opportunities for your leadership.
We know that between your March of Dimes facilitator and your board, you're going to get a lot of your questions answered. But all of us at the Volunteer Leadership Council hope to serve as a resource for you. That means we'll be available to discuss individual challenges. We may not have all the answers, but we can sure help you find them. So pick up the phone and email us or any of the other council members at our Volunteer Leadership Institute address. That's VLI@marchofdimes.com. So let's begin. Welcome to the first session of the Volunteer Leadership Institute. Thanks for joining us. I was watching an old movie on Turner Classic Movies the other day, and I saw a movie called The Magnificent Obsession. And I started to smile because, you know what? I think that everybody here in your rooms watching this, we all share in a magnificent obsession about the March of Dimes. We know that we want to change the world. As you know, there are 3 different but interrelated discussion segments in this series. The March of Dimes Leadership Institute's goals is to enable every single volunteer in the entire country to have the same information and skills. No longer will volunteer training be done piecemeal. Indeed, a volunteer in Wyoming will be able to discuss mission goals and recruitment challenges and tailor the right message to each audience in order to persuade people to contribute or legislate, and do it with the same global viewpoint as a volunteer in Florida. My name is Pauline Gravier. I'm a longtime volunteer, having served as North Texas Regional Chair and Regional Chair of the National Office of Volunteers.
And my name is L.D. Carter. I'm a staff member with the March of Dimes. I serve as an area director for our Western region, working with a team of staff colleagues to provide direct support and assistance to our chapters. As Pauline said, there are 3 segments. First, the importance of governance and chapter leadership at the March of Dimes and board members' roles and responsibilities. How can we assess an existing board to reflect the required talent pool to lead your chapter or division to success? Next, planning. Long-term goals are challenging. It's much easier to plan for a day or a month. This module will give you an overview of our current planning processes, plus how to strategize longer-term goals versus annual targets. Image, reputation, and the visibility of March of Dimes local programs all influence how we're perceived in our communities. Finally, there are best practices and tactics to recruit and retain high-impact board members. The way we organize and facilitate the work of our volunteer leaders is absolutely essential to our overall success.
Today's session addresses the importance of chapter planning. What we hope to do in this module is to give an overview of our current planning process, and then we'll focus on the tools with which to strategize longer-term goals versus annual targets. Would anyone disagree that as the leading force in your chapter, it's crucial that this board team reflect a balanced talent pool? But what's the best way to assess the existing board? What's the best way to recruit new volunteers? And what are some of the best practices other groups use? And what works well for us right now?
We need to communicate. What can we add to the quality of ongoing communication between the members of your state board and your division boards? How often should we do so? In this session, we'll address a variety of approaches to foster such communication and collaboration. I certainly want to know what best practices are in one area that can be applied in mine.
And then we'll address the important role that the image, reputation, and visibility of local programs that the March of Dimes has that will play in the community. As March of Dimes leaders, you have not only an opportunity to engage other leaders in our community, but a business imperative to do so. I've said this before, but we are in a relationships business, and our efforts to reach out to area businesses and organizations in the right way are essential to our efforts to build capacity at our chapter.
We'll assess our industry penetration and present a simple method to analyze the strength of our relationship with companies and organizations. Where we have weak or non-existent relationships are opportunities for growth and revenue, volunteers, and mission awareness. We will walk you through a brief exercise that will help you to build these relationships. Finally, we'll talk about how to create ongoing educational opportunities for your chapter and division board leadership.
And once more, I'll say it again, all of us at the Volunteer Leadership Council will be able to discuss individual resources and challenges with you. We may not have all the answers, but we sure can help you find them. I'm Pauline Gravier.
And I'm L.D. Carter.